Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfoud, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Thank you for tuning in to WCAT Radio and the program I Thought You'd Like to Know This Too. I'm Dr. Anne Urlakis, and I'm delighted to be asked to guest host today's show. I'm a classically trained bioethicist. I hold graduate degrees in bioethics, philosophy, applied philosophical ethics, and healthcare administration, as well as graduate certificates in Catholic social doctrine, Catholic healthcare ethics, Eastern Christian spirituality. As a degreed and practicing bioethicist for the past 2 decades, I've taught medical ethics, bioethics, business ethics at the graduate and undergraduate level and been involved in various legislative efforts regarding pro-life issues, engaged in consultation and research, primarily regarding the subject of human personhood and the history of medicine. This past year, I wrote the general foreword to Francis Etheridge's The Human Person, A Bioethical Word, which is published by En Route Books and available through En Route and Amazon. My passion is defending the sanctity of every human life from conception to natural death. And as a magisterium faithful Catholic, I endeavor to share both the joy of the gospel and the beauty of the magisterium's teaching through my vocation as a bioethicist. And today I have the honor here to be interviewing Mr. Nick Loeb for WCAT Radio. Mr. Loeb is the producer of a very important film entitled Roe v. Wade. Mr. Loeb is an internationally esteemed and well-known businessman, a leader who has been involved in the motion picture industry for decades. Mr. Loeb has an impressive career, both on-screen as an actor and off-screen as a producer of many hit feature films and movies, including the 1998 Primary Colors, which starred John Travolta and Emma Thompson, and the award-winning PBS documentary series, The Living Century, produced along with Barbra Streisand. However, this film project, the Roe v. Wade movie, is absolutely unique. It is truly one of a kind. It tells the backstory behind the 1973 Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, a decision that has resulted in 60 million abortions in the U.S., a decision that has forever changed the moral, political, and cultural landscape in America by eviscerating the legal protection for children in the womb. Nick, thank you so much for joining us here today on WCAT Radio.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for having me. I'm not sure I can compete with that background. You're so impressive, and all the things that you've accomplished throughout your life, quite overwhelming. So, and all the help and support that you have given us on this important film has also been tremendous, and I'm honored and humbled to have you help and support us.
Thank you very much. This is a project I truly believe in. It was an honor to be offered the role as a co-executive producer recently. I believe that this project has the ability to change minds and hearts, save souls, and affect legislation. What other project can you say that about? When you and I first spoke many months ago, last fall, the passion that you had for this project, I was so completely bowled over and impressed by what you said to me when we first spoke about it. This is an ambitious project. As you mentioned then, there is nothing like this that has ever been done before. And even now, in these earlier months, the excitement and the momentum that has been moving has just been phenomenal. Can you tell me how this movie project began? Could you explain to the listeners how you became personally involved in this project and why you're so passionate about it?
Sure. So I was working on a movie about 1.5 years ago as an actor called American Brawler that should be coming out in April. It was a boxing movie, and during this time I had written an op-ed in the New York Times about the protection and sanctity of life, and an issue that I'm going through personally. The director of the movie that I was working on had read the article, and he approached me and said, Nick, I don't know if you know, but I'm trying to make a movie called Roe v. Wade, and I think you'd be the perfect person to help me. And then I said, his name is Ken Kushner. I said, Ken, no one's ever made this movie before? So he said, well, actually, there was a 1989 made-for-TV movie, but it really just sort of gave the highlights of what happened and didn't get into the depth and the conspiracy and the lies and the horrors that had actually happened through this. And I want to make he goes, I want to make a real feature movie that's going to be in theaters, not a documentary. And so I, of course, like every American, I had heard of the case, but I didn't know that much about the details, and took the script home and began to learn a lot of things that I didn't know, and was blown away, and which led me into reading over 40 books on the case, on all the people that were involved, not only on the case but on the movements that got the case to where it got to in the Supreme Court, and then all the things that happened afterwards. And I truly found it to be one of the most fascinating historical stories I'd ever heard of. A lot of people who had big changes in their life because of this. Some people who were pro-choice, who became pro-life. There were major leaders in this movement, had changed their opinion throughout history. They had admitted to telling lies and making up fake news in order to pass their agenda. And it seemed like an Oliver Stone, JFK conspiracy movie, and it got me very excited to get into wanting to rewrite it and make it for screen. And the biggest challenge I think that we have when I describe that we're making a movie is that everyone thinks we're making a documentary. That we're making an actual feature film like the movie JFK or like the movie Selma. And the reason we decided to do this and not to do a documentary is that I believe today the biggest thing that moves hearts and minds is pop culture. We have a president of the United States today who is essentially elected because of pop culture. And he has used the media to move his agenda. And I think for all those folks out there today that are care about this issue and care about this cause, the way that we're really going to have to get inside of people's hearts and minds is through media and film. And if we can make a compelling, fun, exciting, interesting movie that people are going to want to see just for entertainment, I think if we just save one life, we've done our jobs. I've had several friends of mine who read the script who are pro-choice, and I would say almost all of them are now on the fence about their true beliefs after reading the real true history of what happened and what goes on during an abortion. So I think even just the few people who have kind of changed their minds by reading has been really beneficial to the cause I'm after today.
Great. I've read the script, and I find it compelling, as you say, and moving. I'm especially taken by seeing the story unfold through the character of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. I read his book several years ago while he was still alive, and I couldn't put it down. I remember finishing it in like a night. I was just so taken by it. I think, as you say, it is so compelling. Could you speak to the importance of Dr. Nathanson's perspective?
Sure. Dr. Nathanson actually has a very interesting history. Dr. Nathanson wrote 3 different books. The book I'm guessing that you read was called The Hand of God, which was his latest book. He wrote 2 books earlier throughout his lifetime, and Dr. Nathanson was the largest abortionist in American history, overseeing 60 to 75,000 abortions single-handedly.
That number is absolutely staggering.
And I think the challenge that Dr. Nathanson had was, he was going through a time where there was a big movement to help people, and a lot of people thought if they had an unwanted child, it was a burden, and they don't really realize it was an unwanted child. And Dr. Bernard Nathanson was, I think, in denial for so long about what it was. Dr. Nathanson, in 1989, when sonogram technology becomes clearer and better, decides to perform an abortion under a sonogram. While he does this, he realizes that he's actually killing a baby, ripping its arms and legs apart in order to abort it. And he has a big change. He then produces a documentary called A Silent Scream, where she redoes the abortion under a sonogram, which you can Google and see today or rent it. And he goes from the biggest abortionist in history to a major pro-life advocate to defending the unborn. And it's a large majority of our movie is his story. He's a narrator. It's his character. It's his arc. He then goes on to admit that they made up lies for the American people to try to influence the media and the courts in order to pass their agenda, because he was not only a doctor, he was also involved with Planned Parenthood and NARAL, looking for a girl to take the suit to the Supreme Court to overturn the law. So this is really, I would say, large part of a story about Bernard and his partners in crime at the time, which was a guy named Larry Lader and Betty Friedan. They were taking on, they were creating the movement. And a woman named Mildred Jefferson is one of our protagonists, and she was for the pro-life movement. She was the first African-American woman to graduate Harvard Medical School and the second president of the National Right to Life. And her idea about becoming a doctor was to save lives and not to kill them, which she constantly reminds us of the Hippocratic Oath that they had taken to do so. She also believed that abortion was genocide because it has become the number one killer of African Americans in our country today. So it was not only a mission for her to save lives, but it was also to save her race.
That is absolutely profound. Today we're taping this ahead of time, and we are taping this on the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's
birthday.
Day. Yeah, thank you. And it hit me earlier that there was a quote that Dr. King had used in his December 10th, 1964 acceptance speech in Oslo, where he said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant." I love that first line about unarmed truth, because that's what this movie is. This movie is the truth, and it is that truth that has been unspoken, and it is nonviolent truth in contrast to the violence of abortion.
The Martin Luther King birthday is such great timing because as you are aware, one of our executive producers, along with you, is Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King. She's been out there talking about the movie on Fox. She's been a big supporter in helping us get this movie made. And one of the main reasons is not only to protect life, but also protect the minority community from these atrocities, which she is so passionate about. One of the things that is brought up in our movie is the formation of how Planned Parenthood was started by a woman named Margaret Sanger. And although Margaret Sanger herself was not for abortion, she was a eugenicist. Her first major project was called the Negro Project because she was pushing contraception to reduce the Negro population in this country, as she called it. And she felt that African Americans were less fit than whites. So the foundations of Planned Parenthood is steeped in racism. And I think that is something that Dr. King wanted to bring to light. Also the champion of Mildred Jefferson, who had graduated from Harvard. It's a story nobody knows, Dr. Mildred Jefferson, and I think the story of her life also coming out should be an example to many of her peers. And I think what even got Alveda even more excited is she's going to come and play a cameo in the movie as the mother of Mildred Jefferson.
I read that. That is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, so tying this in with Martin Luther King's birthday and coming up this week with the March for Life is great all around.
Yes, that's exactly the tie I was going to make. I agree. I'm very excited to see Dr. Alveda King in that cameo role. What a beautiful way for her to take part in the movie. And yes, as you say, this National March, my children have taken part in this march before. It is. You have more than 500,000 folks peacefully marching up Pennsylvania Avenue every year since 1974 on the anniversary of the abominable decision, and the media does a total blackout. You know, how do you hide more than 500,000 pro-lifers from the rest of the world? You march them up Pennsylvania Avenue, and it is just every year there is this media blackout. What we were talking about before about the peacefulness of the pro-life movement is just seen right there. That was one of the things I enjoyed about reading the script. You see this interplay of good and evil, this interplay of light and dark, this interplay of those who are making good choices, not only for themselves, but for their race, for their people, for the other people of this country, and for all who will come after them, for the unborn, for the next generation, and those who are so completely selfish and making decisions that are motivated out of greed and evil.
Yeah, I mean, I think each character in the film has their own motivation and their own drive and their own arc. There are some characters in the film that truly believe what they're, even though you and I may see the pro-abortionists on the evil side, I think some of them truly believed what they were doing was the right thing. And we didn't want to vilify them just even though their beliefs were wrong. We wanted to show that they had their beliefs, and maybe it was the wrong belief for us, but they had their beliefs and their motivations for that. And although, there was a war and a battle going on between both sides, people did what they had to do to move their agenda. We didn't want to be so slanted and so driven. We really just wanted to get out there and tell the truth, exactly what happens, so we don't get criticized for being a propagandist film.
I think that's a very good point. It is fair. It is very fair. I'm speaking, of course, from my read of it as an ethicist and as a pro-life ethicist. But I have to agree with you. In reading the script, it is fair. It is fair and balanced. And there will be charges, from the other side, but they would be unfair.
Of course, there will be. But I think at the end of the day, Marian, that we have. Both sides, it does, at the end of the movie, the pro-choice, if this was a movie about football, the pro-choicers win. That's actually, at the end of the day. They win, so they're the winners. It does take a little bit of a pro-life slant towards the very end after they win to show that it was done, but it also shows, some of the things that the pro-lifers have done that I think we shouldn't condone. So, like the bombing of abortion clinics. We open the movie with the bombing of an abortion clinic, and then we talk about at the end of the movie how we feel that has gone too far. And so we don't want to be a one-sided, slanted topic. We want to show the people out there what is the truth and let them make up their minds for themselves. And I think the ones who have read this and seen this have. I have a few friends of mine that are, as I said, have been pro-choice, that have read the script and read the Dr. Bernard Nathanson scene and have converted, and showing that other people who are on one side have the ability to have open minds and change. Also, like Norma Corby, Jane Roe, who fought to have the abortion, ended up, in the end of her life, becoming one of the biggest leading pro-life advocates in the world when she realized what she did.
Right. I think this movie speaks to folks on a multiple level. You have, as you say, there are those who honestly believe what they are doing is right, and they come along and they grow as the story unfolds. I think that is a very, very important point. There is an impressive amount of talent and support for this project. You'd mentioned Dr. Alveda King. That terrific 4-minute video clip that she has introducing the project, and her cameo appearance. Can you share some of the other talent that is part of this project?
Sure. Right now, John Voight has come on. He's going to play a cameo as one of the Supreme Court justices.
Okay.
And we're out in the middle of casting for other folks that are out there today. We've got interest probably from 3 or 4 names that you've heard of.
Sure.
Unfortunately, until I have them in writing, I don't think it's very fair of me to say who those are to come on as cast members. But we have a talented crew. I mean, Jennifer O'Neill, who's a former actress and entertainment personality, is interested in being involved. One today, even a friend of mine's mother, who is an Academy Award-winning nominated costume designer named Marilyn Vance, wants to come on, read the script, loved it, and wants to do the costume. So this is not going to be this is going to be a Class A movie. This is not going to be a low, although it's a small budget, it's not going to be a little tiny movie. It's going to be a big theatrical release on 1,000 screens, and it's not a boring little courtroom drama. We've got everything from police chases to raids to huge marches going down Fifth Avenue. We even have a shot in the Playboy Mansion in Chicago. And the reason you say, well, why would that be in your movie? Well, in the 60s, Planned Parenthood used to raise money by auctioning off Playboy Playmates at the mansion. So, these are things that we threw into the movie to really, really motivate or try to encourage pop culture. People are motivated to go see films that are fun and exciting and maybe a little sexy, and try to throw some of that into the film so it wasn't a preachy or movie. Although there is no nudity or no bad language in our film, we do have action, and I guess if you want to call it sex, kind of.
Honestly, that was one of the things that I read the script for very quickly. I wanted to make sure that there was nothing that my name would be tied to that was inappropriate, and there isn't. And I was really pleased to see that. And that point about the Playboy bunnies being auctioned off, I think that is so important, especially this year with all of the careers that have fallen because of impropriety. And when folks realize that it's that type of impropriety that has been the funding source for Planned Parenthood, it's an important point that really needs to be made.
Yeah, Felicity, you're right. You're 100% right. You hit the nail on the head. Planned Parenthood is no different than Harvey Weinstein, taking advantage of these women for money or for power. Or and they have exploited. Planned Parenthood has exploited women themselves.
That's it. When you mentioned that to me last fall, when we first had our first conversation about this, and watching everything that had happened in the ensuing months, that was a point that I repeatedly made to others as I was talking about this movie. This is where the money began. This is where things started. And it is impossible for folks to be out there talking about saving women and what is appropriate when Planned Parenthood's funds began here. You're right.
Well, the interesting thing, I got into a debate the other day with somebody who said that we should be funding Planned Parenthood. I said, listen, I'd be happy to fund Planned Parenthood and give money to Planned Parenthood as long as they weren't funding abortions or selling baby parts. And I shouldn't be forced to give my tax dollars to Planned Parenthood. And the response I got is that, well, we should be. What about all the minority people who can't afford it? I said, oh, so we should pay for minorities to have abortions. So that's essentially, you're saying white people should pay to eliminate African Americans. So I think that ended that conversation pretty quickly. But, I think it's sort of an atrocity to what Planned Parenthood has become. I mean, they make over $1.3 billion a year. Didn't understand why they needed to get into the business of selling baby parts now, or why our government even needs to be involved in funding them at all. I think it's an atrocity.
It is an atrocity.
Tying this into the film and our court case in the movie, most people aren't aware, but two of the Supreme Court justices who made the decision on Roe, one of them had a wife who was a volunteer for Planned Parenthood, and the other one had a daughter who was a volunteer for Planned Parenthood, who has essentially pressured them into making their decisions to legalize abortion. So many people don't know that you find out in the movie.
I remember when you had mentioned that last fall, and again, I checked these things out, and I thought that was a very, very salient point to make. These are things that people just don't realize. Even those of us that have studied the decision and have studied the issues, have looked at the language, I had no idea. And as you mentioned when we talked the first time, take a look at these things, check them out, do fact-checking, due diligence. It's all right there, and it is. Everything is verifiable. So I agree. It is a monumental project, and it is being done in the right way.
Well, we really need. Hopefully, we'll be able to get it funded, Marion, with your support. And I hope all your listeners go to RoeVWadeMovie.com. I tell everybody. 500,000 people go and march to the Right for Life. If each one of those persons just gave $5, we would have the money to make the movie. We raised $2.5 million already. We need to raise another $2.5 million to make it a real theatrical, studio-looking movie that people are going to want to go see. We just started crowdfunding, so every dollar, every person who gets involved counts. And then we've added some exciting things in terms of people who want to be involved. Like some of the perks are getting to be in the movie as an extra, or bigger perks, you can actually put money and get a speaking role, or put money in and work with the cinematographer or the director or the music, or any way you want if you sign up and join and make contributions.
Can you mention that crowdfunding site again, please?
Sure, it's RoeVWadeMovie.com. Pretty simple. ROEV Wade WADE movie.com. If you go to Indiegogo and type in Roe v. Wade, it'll come right up. Or if you just Google Roe v. Wade movie, it's all over the internet now, because Facebook has been trying to block us from promoting this.
That was another question I was just about to ask you. In the past week, since the beginning of the crowdfunding campaign, there's been a ton of media interest, from Breitbart to the Washington Times, LifeSite News. There's been a lot of positive press. But one of the issues that has also been highlighted is that of censorship by Facebook. Can you explain the circumstances there? Can you explain what's going on?
Sure. When we launched our site, we used Facebook to promote our crowdfunding. Essentially, it's the only platform that has the ability to do that out there so effectively today in the country that everybody uses, and they have a monopoly on that. What they did was they blocked us from being able to promote it to our friends. So I have, let's say, 4,000 friends, and I wasn't able to send it out to them. People who became and liked our page were also blocked from sharing it to their friends. We even went so far as to pay Facebook for ads and started buying ads on Facebook. and people were being blocked from sharing the ads. So they were essentially taking our money and not letting us share our ads, which is fraud. Because of the articles that came out, they then let us invite our friends, but now, they've blocked other things and blocked other sharings and blocked other ads. And, yesterday I wasn't able to like other pro-life sites. And so It's been sort of a give and take. Every time we find something, we post it. And, I'll give you an example. If you put the Washington Times article and you post that article on your Facebook page, your Facebook page will say this article no longer exists. But if you click on it, it opens up the Washington Times. But but Facebook lies to you and says it doesn't exist.
I've seen that with Facebook before with some of the pro-life issues. This is not the first time, so it's not a surprise, and it's good to finally have this out there in the press as well.
Well, listen, on one hand, Facebook is a private organization, but at the same time, they have a monopoly on this, and they're violating, equal protections. We right now have a case in the Supreme Court over a cake being made for a gay couple because the bakers refused to make the cake. This is no different than Facebook not allowing my personal beliefs to be promoted on their site, just like the others wanted their cake made by the bakery. The difference is, though, they could go to 1,000 other bakeries to make that cake. There's not another 1,000 Facebooks for me to go and promote my movie. So they have a monopoly on this.
That's an excellent point. They have the monopoly, and there is no other outlet.
Which is a violation of antitrust law in this country.
That is a very good point. We've had similar issues with other pro-life and pro-religious issues on Facebook. I have a friend who is a Byzantine Catholic priest, and 2 years ago when Facebook would not allow the title father, sister, brother to appear before someone's name, there was a series of articles about this particular priest in the press. Any of us who shared those articles were threatened with suspension. And even if we shared those articles in private messenger, the articles disappeared automatically from our private messenger. One would think private messenger means the messages are private, but they weren't.
Obviously not. Facebook is reading your information.
Exactly. I have been very careful how I have shared this information because I know we need it to go forward, and I don't want to be suspended. As you say, this monopoly exists, and there's no other way to get this information out.
Well, if you have any lawyers that are listening who want to take on a pro bono case and sue Facebook, please have them call into your show, and I've got a whole list of other people against Facebook, not only for the violation of our rights, but also antitrust and fair practices.
It's an important way to get information out, and if it can be done right, it can be such a useful tool and can really, really help people. It's a fun tool, as you say, but there's got to be a justice there. I had mentioned some of the media that has been picking this up. Even trying to get a hold of you today, you were busy with another interview. Can you mention some of the other media outlets right now that folks can see you in regarding
Sure.
the
as you had mentioned, Breitbart has been a big supporter of what's going on and had really led the charge in all of this. Life News, Newsmax. I even did an interview this morning on Newsmax TV. I know Alveda King is going to be going on Fox to talk about this. Interestingly enough, through my own court case and court issues, the Today Show wanted me on to talk about my own court issues and to do follow-ups. But as soon as I took on the cause of making the Roe v. Wade movie, the mainstream media didn't want to talk about it and wanted to block that out, which is interesting that people like the Today Show, NBC and CBS morning shows have no interest in talking about the truth. Facebook blocking this type of content. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to bring to light the truth of Roe v. Wade and the truth of the movie. They try to bury it any way they can. And this is the challenge what we're having today on why Donald Trump calls news fake news, because they're so one-sided. And I think this is what has angered the American people today and driven them out to put in a president like Donald Trump today, because they're sick and tired of the unfairness and the bias today in the media. And the media, and I think today is, and interestingly enough, the more they attack, they really haven't learned their lesson. I mean, there's an old expression: if you want to catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And if the media today wants to convert people to be liberals, they shouldn't attack the conservatives, because all they're doing is driving more people to the other side by being biased and vilifying. So let them continue to do so. They'll just drive people to become more conservative.
You know, in this week when we have the pro-life march, that point becomes really clear. When you see year after year that you have huge numbers of folks that are marching peacefully in defense of life on the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. And every year the media coverage is poor. You'll have them photograph a group of 25 and say that there were a few thousand people that showed up, or a few hundred people that showed up at the other marches. And it's completely fake. And for those who may not even be with us, but who got caught in the traffic jams, and who see the numbers, when they turn on the TV and see what's being reported doesn't mesh with their reality, it causes them to think. And we end up with winning hearts inadvertently because of their lies.
No, you're right, and it's a real travesty today in our country about how controlled and manipulated the media is. Everyone says politicians are corrupt. The biggest, most corrupt system in our country today is the media. And it's sad, but I thank God we have people like you and all the folks at National Right to Life and the pro-life communities across the country who are willing to get out there and speak and say something and continue to fight for our rights and to get the information out there.
Well, those of us who are working to defend the sanctity of life are really eager to see the Roe v. Wade movie reach the silver screen, because it will finally reveal the corruption and the deceit. There are, as we've said, a lot of well-funded and influential individuals and institutions who are going to fight backing this movie, and the mainstream media is one of the largest. Can you speak to some of the other challenges? We've mentioned the media. We've mentioned coming up with funding. Are there other challenges that you face to making this movie a reality, and how are you circumventing?
Sure, I think so. A lot of the challenges is Hollywood getting, when we go make offers to pro-life actors that we know their agents won't give them the script, or the agents have told their talent, don't do this, it'll ruin your career.
Okay.
In terms of fundraising, a lot of big donors have, there's a very limited donor pool for people who will invest in pro-life causes. So, getting them engaged has been challenging. A lot of them have invested in movies in the past, and the movie business is a challenging one, to say the least, and a lot of people have lost money making movies. And I just want to try to reiterate, this is not about, even though I do believe this movie is going to be the most controversial movie of the year and make over $100 million, it's more than anything, it's about getting the message out. So if there are any large donors who can even donate $5, $10, $100, $200,000 to the movie, it is worth it, even if you don't make your money back, to get the truth out there. If you're somebody who gives that kind of money to pro-life causes, I tell you there's no more impact that you're going to have on getting it to a movie that actually people are going to go watch and see, since we already have distribution on 1,000 screens already.
You raise an important point there about Hollywood being one of those institutions that has not been helpful to having this movie produced. And
actually, the opposite, Marianne. They're making a Roe v. Wade movie that is full of lies, and they will it's what I call the Wikipedia version.
Sure.
It's sort of a remake of the 1989 made-for-TV movie about how Norma wanted an abortion. The women's rights folks helped her to get this, and how great they were to get everybody on board and get this done. And doesn't get into the real weeds and the details and the truths about how they lied and conspired in order to do so.
That is why this movie is so very important. Getting this truth out is so important. Also, this is a movie that has never been made before, but it's also a process that's never been encountered before. You have so many obstacles and have creatively found ways to circumvent those obstacles. Crowdfunding, for an example. You're taking a novel approach to getting around the obstacles that the institutions are throwing at you.
Well, I'm doing my best, Marianne, and we just started last week, and it's challenging, needless to say, and I think at the end of the day, I think this will help more ways than one, having to take a non-conventional approach, because especially with crowdfunding, everybody who even puts in $1 into the movie is now invested, and they feel like they're part of it. And so that is not only our investor in our movie, that is also our audience, the person who's going to go and then buy the ticket to see the movie, bring their friends, and spread the word. So it's also helping us build a huge base of marketing support for when the movie's ready to come out and be released.
I see that conversations are starting between folks that would never have started, and I find that very exciting too. I think that even before this movie is in production, you are already affecting change because of the conversations that are being started.
Right.
One of the things that I noticed with the movie was that there's been the pledge to give 10% of the movie's profits to pro-life causes. I think that's a huge impact, potentially. What are some of the other impacts that you see?
Well, I think the biggest impact that I think we'll see is I think people will see the fact that there's actually a baby in the womb from the very onset, the first couple of weeks, hearing a heartbeat. And I think the impact that it's going to see when somebody sees this on screen, people tend to believe what they watch, and I think, will be wowed by this and really have a second thought when potentially maybe going to have an abortion, maybe say, wow, there's really a baby inside of me. Do I really want to kill that child? It's not just a glob of cells. It's actually a human being. And if that's the impact that we can get through to save one life, it'll all be worth it.
I think that's a very good point. I think you give people the opportunity to stop and think. And because this movie has so much press, so much enthusiasm, interest, and interest from the other side in a negative way, it's starting conversations. And by the time it hits the silver screen, this enthusiasm will still be there. People who heard about it now are going to be eager to go take a look at it and see what the product is. They'll remember. It'll trigger something.
Yeah, and I hope so. I mean, we just need the courage of some pro-life billionaires to come out there and help us get this done. And, we've been knocking down their doors, and from a lot of the folks who could write the check to make this movie without blinking, that wouldn't hurt their pocketbooks, and hope that they will be listening to the show, where somebody will reach out to them and let them know that in terms of making an impact in the pro-life movement, this is probably the biggest impact they could ever make in their lifetime is to help get the movie, the truth of the court case out there that has led to the murder and death of over 60 million babies since 1973 in our country alone.
One of the other things that I noticed through this movie and through the decision itself is that it is torn apart our society. It tears apart individual lives. It tears apart individual children. It tears apart families and relationships. But when you look at our society and see what has happened since 1973, since this decision, the polarization, the political landscape has changed, the religious, the moral fiber of our country has changed. There have been so many changes. And I think for those, as you say, those who have the ability to fund this movie, to make an impact in this movie, they have the ability to change a whole lot just with this one gift.
You know, that is true, and I think a lot of the changes, it becomes from a little bit almost like a pendulum in a way. You know, when I grew up, you know, I was born in 1975, 2 years after the decision, and I grew up, although in a Republican family, a very socially liberal one. I grew up in New York, and most people were pro-choice, and they believed that an abortion was a woman's right to choose to do whatever she wanted with her own body. As time has gone on and technology has become more proficient today, we see that it's not just their body, it's somebody else's body inside of them. It's another human being. And if you look at the polls today, although the youth of America today is moving more liberal today on issues like gay marriage, they're actually moving more conservative on issues together with, like abortion, and becoming more pro-life. And a lot of the pendulum has swung that way due to technology, due to the fact that we can hear a heartbeat in the first couple of weeks, see the baby before the first trimester, know that it's alive, and know that has pain sensors, and know it's a human being. You know, and I think that is changing back the other way today. You know, over 50%, I think 51% of this country today is actually pro-life. But the media tells us different, and the media that is really controlled out of New York and California try to tell us that it's not. And it's the perpetuating lie of the media that perpetuates and people believe the truth. If you tell, it's what you'll find out in our movie, it's what the pro-choicers did. They said, well, we'll just make up the statistics. And if the statistics are told the same way long enough, people will want to believe it, and people will want to be part of the higher statistic. It's human nature to want to be, you know, if 60% of people believe in abortion, it's right. Generally human nature to want to be with the 60%ers, not with the 40%ers. And that is what people like Bernard Nathanson and Larry Lader and Betty Friedan did, and came out later and admitted that they did this and lied to persuade the American people, to put pressure on the justices to make this decision.
As a bioethicist, watching that technology change and seeing the issues that are coming down the pike because of the changes in technology, on the positive side, as you say, we see earlier and earlier that heartbeat, that movement. We see from the moment, you know, giving validity to Humanae Vitae as we approach its 50th anniversary here, and everything the Holy Father said then. This child is a child from the moment of conception. We have an arbitrary definition for death when heart and brain activity stops, and yet we refuse to recognize that life is there when heart and brain activity is there. It's a double standard. You raise the issue of pain. When I was first starting out in bioethics, one of the issues that touched my heart that I think is very, very poorly understood is that in the 1980s, we were still doing major surgeries on neonates with mere paralytics under the presumption that they did not feel pain. No. Technology has changed, but in the 1980s, it was standard practice to do an open-heart surgery on a neonate without the benefit of anesthesia, only giving that child. I know.
I just, I think, Marianne, what boggles my mind is I have been in the room of a friend of mine who was pregnant, and in her first trimester, I went in during the sonogram, and you can hear that sonogram machine, and the heartbeat's so loud, and that human that you hear it and you feel it. And how after that can you just get rid of it? It boggles my mind. And the fact that I know a lot of states want us to put into law that they want women to be able to have a sonogram before they have an abortion, I think is great. Why people like Planned Parenthood would not want that is staggering. They're all supposed to be about a woman's health. It is not healthy for a woman to have an abortion. It's actually more healthy for the women to carry the child through pregnancy. And women actually, and they also say women who have issues with psychological issues by being forced to not being allowed to have an abortion. Actually, it's been proven that women tend to have more psychological issues down the road after having an abortion, not actually having the child, and the regrets and the depression and the years of thinking of the mistakes that they made of killing their child is actually been worse mentally for women. So I don't understand how Planned Parenthood could say they would not want the most healthiest things mentally and physically for a woman. They should be trying to convince the woman not to have the abortion instead of have the abortion.
You raise a very good point. Even this year, November, I believe it was a November article of the American Journal of Psychiatry, looking at a large group of women from Denmark, demonstrating the threefold increase in suicide after an abortion years later. The psychological ramifications of abortion are huge, and that is data that has been largely kept from people who are making decisions.
Well, that's because, Planned Parenthood is essentially the most powerful pro-abortion organization in the country, and that's their business. They're a money-making business, and so if they got out of the business of abortion, they may go bankrupt. So, of course, they're going to push abortion and hide the truth of how the effects of an abortion may have on somebody. It takes them 2 seconds to show a woman a sonogram to listen to their baby and let the woman make the choice. Why do they have to force the woman to make the choice themselves? I think they put a lot of pressure on that.
I work with a number of pregnancy help centers, and the Knights of Columbus, a wonderful organization that provides free ultrasound machines to the pregnancy help centers. And study after study has demonstrated that when a woman sees that child with that heartbeat, 90% of them will elect to keep that baby, even if when they walk through the doors they were completely convinced otherwise. It's a powerful, powerful image to have that on the screen. And what you are doing with this movie is very similar. You are putting that powerful image, again, on the screen. It's a truth. It's the truth that you're putting out there.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I don't know why Planned Parenthood would be against it. It's not like saying showing the sonogram will take away her choice. It actually gives women more information to make a better choice and a more informed choice. And it's being more supportive of a woman to give them all the options and all the evidence and all the facts. And so I find Planned Parenthood to be hypocritical when they don't want to do that. I mean, I thought the whole point of them was to protect women, not hurt them.
Much of this comes back down to the dignity of the human person, the dignity of the unborn, but also the dignity of the woman who's carrying that child. And if you truly believe that that woman has the dignity, then give her all of the information so that she can make an informed choice to keep that child. By hiding that information, you're essentially saying that we don't think this individual is bright enough, is capacitated enough to make the decision to save the life of her child.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And Planned Parenthood should be focused again, on protecting women, right? On women's health, and being informed of all the issues is the best way a woman can actually make the decision, the choice she wants for herself.
I think there are so many good alternatives, positive alternatives, and I'm thrilled to see the growth of these pregnancy health centers. I'm associated with several here in Wisconsin, and the health care that they give. And one of the benefits of this movie that you are producing is the pledge to donate that 10% back. And in that way, you are really affecting the health care of women and their babies at these organizations. And for those who are involved in helping to fund those organizations, this movie is a terrific way of, again, reaching out and helping those organizations.
No, absolutely. And, none of us producers on this movie are taking any fees. We're doing this for free.
Yes.
This is not a money-making venture for us. If anything, it's a money-losing venture for us. I've put in a lot of my own money to get all this up and started and going already. And for me, this is all about the cause. But again, wanting to make a fun movie, not a propaganda movie, so people will want to go see it and enjoy their time at the movie theater. We just need help getting it done.
I've stressed that with everyone I've talked to about this movie as well. This is completely voluntary. This is completely pro bono. And yes, there are other things that are on my desk, on my to-do list, projects that I've promised folks, deadlines. And as you know, many of them have been put aside because I believe in this project and I've put it to the forefront of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and Marianne, that's been, so helpful of you. I think the challenge we have, rather the pro-life community, there's so many people around the country that support pro-life organizations that I think the pro-life movement has become a little diluted. It's nice to know that every single state in the country has a pro-life group. Nationally, there's probably another 50, probably 100 different pro-life groups. But the challenge with that is they've all spread so thin. You have to have operations to run and manage all of them. And I think if we could pool together our resources and unify a little, we'd have a little more power and influence in moving our agenda and more money to be used to put to good and getting things accomplished rather than just operating. And we're all on the same side, and we should be all focused on helping each other and not competing against each other, which is why the money that we're making is why we're doing this free, and the money that we're making we're giving away to these groups. And I encourage and I hope some of these groups that there's been a lot of groups and a lot of people like you and National Right for Life and Life News and who've all been very supportive and helpful, but there have been some others that don't want to utilize their resources to help another pro-life organization, even just sharing members. And I find that to be a little challenging, which adds another challenge to getting this done. And I think if we could all just get together, we'd have a much, much more bigger impact as one group and one voice going forward.
I agree with you. It is challenging. When you see that pro-life march and you see the unity that is there and that many folks marching down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Exactly. They all get together, Marianne, they all get together at that one point of the year for that. If we could just do that once a month in some kind of forum of the 500,000 people getting together, and even if, they all just gave $1 to one thing every year, that'd be $500,000 we could put towards something that could have great impacts.
I agree. You see that potential there, and the challenge is taking that momentum, bringing it back to each individual locale, and doing something with it. And as you say, we've become so spread out that, there's the old adage that it's a whole lot easier to turn a PT boat than an aircraft carrier. We're facing, to carry the metaphor, we're facing some pretty substantial waves and rough seas, and when we are so spread out, it makes it impossible to react to those, let alone be proactive.
Yeah. Well, I hope they will all come together. I don't quite know how to fully do it. I'm reaching out to every organization leader that I can. I know you are too, and Marianne, I wish I had another 20 of you. and I think if I did, we would be able to get this made. So. There are a handful of you out there, and you've been truly amazing and great for this. So thank you so much.
It's an honor to work on this project, and as I mentioned to you before, this is professional in terms of my role as a bioethics. It's deeply religious because of the magisterium faithful faith that I have. It's also personal. I am a mother of 8 children, 3 of whom are internationally adopted.
Wow.
I believe in adoption. I believe in saving lives, and that's one of the charges that is often levied against us as pro-lifers. So what do you do personally? Would you take somebody else's child? You bet I would. I have. And I love them with all my heart. And it is an important point to get out there that there are lives to be saved, and there are families who will love these children.
You're 100% right. I know so many families today who have challenges getting pregnant and would adopt in a heartbeat, and there's a long list of families waiting to adopt babies today. So
exactly.
And the whole argument of unwanted babies is the most crazy argument that I've ever heard. You said, well, women should be able to have abortions because of so many unwanted babies. Well, does that mean that all those unwanted babies that are been born, we should just get rid of them and kill them today because they're unwanted? I mean, it's the same argument. It's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would we get rid of an unwanted unborn when we wouldn't get rid of an unwanted born? Just because one is born and one's not. They're still both human beings.
Exactly. They are created in the image and likeness of God and endowed with a unique plan that He has for each and every one of them. And we have no right to end that. It is beyond us. We have the right to cherish and cradle it and do everything we can to bring it to fruition and support those who are doing their best to be parents in difficult situations.
Right. Marianne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Again, do you want to give that website again for folks who are interested in participating?
Sure, RoeVWadeMovie.com. You can Google Roe v. Wade movie. You can go to Indiegogo and go to Roe v. Wade movie. It's all over the Internet now. You can go to my Twitter, Nick Loeb. You can go to the Roe v. Wade Twitter. It's pretty easy to find if you're out there. If people, even just gave, $5, $10, $20, would be thrilled. Pass it all on to your friends. If each person just got, a group of their friends to give a little bit, I think we'll get there. So I do have faith, and anybody who wants to get involved and help out, email us. We're willing to include anybody in this process.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for being a part of this interview here on WCAT Radio. It has been a joy again to have the opportunity to speak with you, and it has been an honor to be a part of this project.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it, and take care, and have a great rest of your week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.